Across Europe, authorities are scrambling to track down more suspects from sleeper cells. In France, police are searching for the people responsible for the deadly terror attacks. Last week, 12 people were arrested in Paris, but some have been released. Senior international correspondent Jim Bittermann is in Paris with more details on this investigation. And Jim, we're learning 3 women have been released from custody. What do you know about those cases and those that are still being held?
Well, we're not real certain exactly why they're being held. We suspect that they are accomplices of Ahmadi Koulibaly, who was the terrorist who took over that kosher supermarket on the eastern edge of Paris and killed 4 people and then died in a hail of police gunfire. In any case, Koulibaly lived in the southern suburbs of Paris. He had a lot of acquaintances and a lot of people knew him, particularly because of his criminal past. And as the prosecutor's office said, they have raked very broadly, basically saying they're picking up anybody who might have had any contact with him, probably going through his cell phone records to find out who he talked to. They've held the 12 people for 48 hours, and then as of this morning, they either had to charge them or release them. Under the terrorism laws, they can hold them for another 48 hours. So they've continued the 48-hour stretch on the 9 that they're most interested in. The 3 women, apparently, if they've been released, that kind of says that they have no connection to the case, or at least police are not suspicious about them. Now, all of this goes back to something that the French have been fearful of for years, and that is homegrown terrorism, that young people would go off to the Middle East, listen to the siren songs of the terrorists, and come back and commit terroristic acts. We've talked about it, but as of 10 days ago, it's become very real here. And now the French are centering on what they can do about it. And a lot of people say one of the keys is education.
For 7 years now, Ahmed El-Kay's talk show on French TV has taken on important social issues like racism, security, and multiculturalism, topics that justify the show's title, Toutes les France, all kinds of France, with guests who reflect the country's diversity. So, after last week's bloody days of terrorist attacks, there was little doubt what this week's program would center on. In a special edition, the French-Egyptian host decided to show a film called My Brother the Terrorist, and after the film, gathered teachers and students to debate what he believes is the solution to France's homegrown terrorism: education.
How are we going to teach in a different manner all what we call the Republican values, liberty, fraternity, equality, and make responsible citizens today? Because the assassins were in the French Republican school. They learned in the French Republican school. They are French citizens. So what happened today?
In fact, one of El-Kay's guests calculated that the 3 terrorists involved in the shootings last week, because they went through the French school system, had each been in classes with at least 45 different school teachers. Yet somewhere along the line, they made the decision to reject those national values.
Il y a aujourd'hui 10 000 soldats.
Today there are 10,000 soldiers in the streets of France, but there are 1 million teachers. These 1 million teachers are 1 million soldiers for tolerance, for liberty, and for the Republic.
De la liberté, de la République.
But for both educators and students involved in the program, the challenge seems to be coming up with the practical tools to give young people, who increasingly come from diverse cultural and religious backgrounds, a reason to feel French first. El-Kay, who once did a program called Shake Google and Abu Facebook, says that in an era of the internet and social media, with problems of discrimination and unemployment, it has become more and more difficult to inspire young people.
You have to be very careful and very vigilant and understand why people decide to leave the French society, to leave their life, where is their dream, and consider that going to Syria and fighting and becoming jihadist is an adventure. So where is the adventure in the French society? Where is the dream?
And Lynda, I would say one of the things that's maybe coincidental and partly ironic about all that is that program was taped in the suburb of Genevieve, where this morning, or at least overnight last night, one of the 3 terrorists was buried in an anonymous grave. Lynda?
Yeah, education, I guess, an opportunity for these young people in France is certainly very important. Just in terms of how important is it for authorities to assess whether radicals are working alone or within groups, and what are they doing about that? How are they investigating that?
Well, I think one of the ways they're investigating is through their cell phone records. That's been one of the big connections that have been made between and among these various people that have been picked up. I think that the question is whether or not they're being directed by Al-Qaeda of the Arabian Peninsula or perhaps by ISIS in a very hands-on fashion, or whether they have just been allowed to go into action on their own. And I think the answer to that is what we've seen over the last 10 days here is that in the case of the 3 terrorists here, it looks like they were basically commissioned by both Al-Qaeda of the Arabian Peninsula and ISIS, and went into action on their own, that they weren't getting direct orders to say attack on a certain date or anything like that. It was basically left up to them to decide when the most opportune time would be to attack and how to attack, and that's what they did. Lynda?
Yeah, thanks very much. Jim Bittermann there in Paris. We'll talk to you very soon.